Seeing mothers rushing out of Ukraine with babies in their arms, fleeing harm to find safety and peace, to live freely, is exactly what my great-grandmother had to do with her son, my grandfather, more than 100 years ago. Grandpa's family was forced to flee because of the Russian pogrom, creating a stream of refugees looking for a home, displaced people looking for a safe place to lay their heads at night without fear of massacre.
Dear Family is a podcast hosted by Rachel Steinman, a writer, an educator, and a mental health advocate. And Rachel gets us up close and personal, so we feel a strong connection, familiarity, and comfort with her guests. So settle in and join us as we search for true healing and journey with Rachel and her most interesting guests.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Dear Family, the podcast. Today, I am sharing a short solo podcast based on a personal essay I wrote, and I thought it appropriate to share because it's about family, it's about wellness, and it's about what we are seeing at the moment coming at us, all these images that are so heartbreaking from Ukraine, and what war means, and how traumatic it is, and what we wish for our family. So I hope that you find some value in this personal story that I'm sharing with you and my wishes. And I also want to wish you all the best. Our government is finally coming to the realization the importance of mental health on our youth. Unfortunately, this pandemic has created a true mental health crisis. And whereas it used to be 1 in 4 youth dealt with some form of a mental health issue, whether it was anxiety or OCD or eating disorders or something along those lines, I honestly feel like it's maybe 1 in 2 now. So many kids are just dealing with just constant fight or flight pressures coming straight at them without outlets to deal with it. We need to address it before it becomes even further of a crisis. On that note, thank you so much for listening to this podcast and subscribing and sharing with your friends and following me on all the social media outlets at Right Now Rachel. That's right with a W. Also looking out for your health and for your loved ones and remembering the importance of asking for help if you need it, because it's so brave. And talking about mental health issues, especially if it's your own, is not attention seeking, it's support seeking. I love that. I heard that the other day, and I think it's really true. And we need to support one another. We're going to get through this and we're going to feel great. Let's focus on some optimism. We all could use that optimism and hope. Get outside, feel that beautiful spring weather starting to come out. I took a walk the other day, listened to the birds, felt fantastic. It's amazing what that vitamin D can do for you. Lastly, make sure to check out the show notes so you can see a link to see some of the images of my great-grandmother and my grandparents who come from Ukrainian descent. Thanks for listening. Take care, everyone. Dear Ukrainian grandparents, when I watch the senseless human suffering in Ukraine with tears in my eyes, it's as if my dear Jewish-Ukrainian grandparents' history is being repeated. My family were the lucky ones who were able to escape, as evidenced by me, their Jewish granddaughter and great-granddaughter, whose Ukrainian blood runs through me and is here today to be able to podcast this without fear of censorship. Because my family was able to escape Ukraine a little over a century ago, I was fortunate to be born at the right time and in the right place. My childhood began in Southern California in the 70s, at a time when girls were not only encouraged to take ballet, but to play t-ball. As a Jewish girl in the 80s, I was not only encouraged to go to Hebrew school, but to be bat mitzvahed, a practice reserved for boys only not long before. In the 90s, I was not only encouraged to attend college, but to go on to graduate school and to continue to use my voice to try to make a difference in the world, even if it's just with my daughters. Seeing mothers rushing out of Ukraine with babies in their arms, fleeing harm to find safety and peace, to live freely, is exactly what my great-grandmother, Anna Kaplan, born Anna Komsky, had to do with her son, my grandfather, more than 100 years ago. My beloved grandfather, Isaac Kaplan, who my oldest daughter is named after, was born in a shtetl, a village on the outskirts of Kyiv. Think of Fiddler on the Roof, and you'll get a good idea of the life that his family led. The village in the famous musical takes place in Anatevka, less than 20 miles outside of the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. Like Tevye's family, Grandpa's family was forced to flee because of the Russian pogrom, creating a stream of refugees looking for a home, displaced people looking for a safe place to lay their heads at night without fear of massacre. Since the recent Russian invasion, the UN has reported 2 million people have become refugees. Ukrainian parents are taking unthinkable measures to protect their children, including sending them into school wearing stickers identifying their blood types in case of bombings. I can't even imagine. My great-grandmother left her home just outside Kyiv with nothing but a few coins sewn into her jacket pockets and her baby in her arms. She did whatever she had to do to survive and to get to America, where she hoped what she heard was true, that the roads were paved in gold. My grandpa was a young boy when he made it to America, a refugee coming through Ellis Island to eventually settle in Chicago. The streets were in fact not lined with precious metal. The reality was Grandpa's father, my great-grandfather Jacob, worked hard to support his family by selling fruit from a cart in hopes that one day his son would have the American dream. My Orthodox Jewish-Ukrainian family was very grateful to live in a country that allowed them freedom, especially when it came to religion. Although Grandpa considered becoming a rabbi, he decided to become a doctor instead, changing his Jewish-sounding name in order to get into medical school because of the quotas put on Jews. He'd go on to become Dr. Erwin Callan, making house calls, delivering babies, taking care of the young and old in his community, continuing his scientific research, and saving lives. Grandpa was even written up in medical books after diagnosing a newborn baby with appendicitis, proving the benefits of opening borders to refugees. One day, while doing his rounds at the hospital, Grandpa met a beautiful Jewish-Ukrainian-blooded American, an auburn-haired young woman who came in to have a broken bone set after a fall. Grandpa fell head over heels in love with Miriam Silverman, my lovely grandmother, who my younger daughter is named after. Grandma Miriam was born in America, but her parents, my great-grandparents, emigrated from the Dnipro region, the eastern part of Ukraine. Grandma Miriam also changed her name to sound more American, and in 1940, Erwin and Marion, two Ukrainian Americans, were married on U.S. soil. 2 years later, in 1942, my grandparents were expecting their first child, my dad, Norman Callan. With World War II raging on, Grandpa voluntarily enlisted in the Army under General Patton and left his pregnant wife behind to become a flight surgeon in Europe. Grandpa's unit would take temporary cover or take over the mayor's house and set up a hospital helping to save wounded soldiers to continue the good fight and protect our precious freedom. When the war came to an end, Grandpa stayed on and helped decontaminate the concentration camps to rehabilitate his fellow Jewish people back to health from walking skeletons. Grandpa always ate fast, like he was still in a war, but he never did discuss the horrors he witnessed. 8 decades ago, no one discussed mental health, which meant he must have lived with the post-traumatic stress those who witness war firsthand live with for the rest of their lives, unless they are treated. This brings me to what the Ukrainians are seeing firsthand, a crisis that shocks the system like no other. Reports of young children and even animals in zoos hearing sirens go off put them into a state of pure fright, a heightened state of stress. As a mental health advocate, it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, war is very bad for everything, especially mental health. Plain and simple, it's traumatic. It's impossible to equate the experience of living through a war to that of watching it unfold on a screen, but the people in Ukraine and around the world are watching this crisis unfold, not only through traditional news outlets like newspapers and network news, but more immediate on social media. The TikTok videos, Instagram images and stories, and tweets are raw, unfiltered, and real. As a public service announcement, I must remind all you parents out there to please be mindful of what your kids and teens are consuming. It's important to limit the disturbing photos and videos filling their screens. All the images of damages to buildings and bodies after the shelling in cities, and people and pets huddled in shelters, Ukrainian citizens tearfully calling their loved ones to say goodbye, have devastating effects on our outlook. You can model the behavior by shutting it off yourself and also protecting your mental wellness. I have to remind myself to not have cable news on when my daughter first comes out of her room in the morning before school begins, and to take a break from the 24-hour news cycle. It's just not healthy. Now, the stream of information we are all receiving about Ukraine is in fact powerful because it forces us to pay attention and it gives us a window into the experiences of the people there. But it's also a lot to process, and it is especially harmful to our youth. The tracking up-to-the-minute developments can come at a cost. It's a fire hose of information, full force coming at us with no time to turn off that valve, and it causes us to be in a constant state of fight or flight. With the footage and photos from Ukraine flooding social media and misinformation spreading rampantly, the implications for public health continue to grow, and they continue to need to be addressed. We obviously can't and should not bury our heads, but we have to remember to take care of our mental health so we can be of service to others. As many of us at home complain about rising gas prices and inflation, let's remember and be grateful that for us, we still have a choice. We can choose to travel less, carpool, take public transportation, or walk. Ukraine can't. We can choose to donate money and essential supplies to places like UNICEF, CARE, and the Red Cross to help with the Ukrainian crisis. We can choose to take action with the peaceful protest and with our wallets by banning Russian imports. We can stay informed and check our sources as to not spread misinformation. We can welcome a refugee, help those who are helping refugees, and consider all the amazing contributions refugees continue to make in our societies. And lastly, we can remember we are all human. We all bleed red, and we are all intimately connected no matter our views. As a granddaughter, daughter, and mother, I know one thing for sure. Family is everything. My heart is with all the grandparents and parents and children of Ukraine. I cannot begin to imagine the fear and grief gripping the families on both sides of this conflict. And so I will continue to pray that this chaos stops and that one day the Ukrainians and the Russians will know peace and be able to have children who all can write their own stories or letters without censorship. To my dear Ukrainian grandparents and great-grandparents, I want to say thank you for not giving up hope for a life of freedom I have been so fortunate to inherit and to be able to pass on to my daughters. To the dear Ukrainian grandparents, parents, sons, and daughters, thank you for not giving in to a madman. We hold your spirit in our prayers as you hide out in bomb shelters, cross borders with nothing but your clothes on your back, or resist in any way you can. We are so moved by your desire to fight for what is right and to pass on a better world to your children. We see strength and honor in your fight, and we pray it will be over soon so you can come out and feel the sunshine on your beautiful faces and celebrate freely with your loved ones. As your President Zelensky says, he will not give up on you, his people, or on democracy, and as my grandparents and great-grandparents believed, we will not give up on hope for a better future for all. Love always, your great-granddaughter and fellow supporter, Rachel. This is Rachel Steinman. For more information or to contact me with any questions, comments, or guest ideas, please check out rightnowrachel.com. That's right with a W. Thank you so much for listening, subscribing, and sharing, dear family. And if you found value in what you've just heard, I would love and so appreciate a great review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Until next time, I wish you love, happiness, and good mental health.